There is a moment in every investigation when hope quietly leaves the room. The evidence has been logged. Witnesses have been questioned. Leads have dried up. And what remains is silence. The cases you are about to hear are not famous because they were solved. They are remembered because they refused to be understood. These crimes shattered communities, destroyed families, and exposed the terrifying truth that sometimes, even with modern policing, evil escapes. Tonight, NOXHOUR takes you inside crimes so disturbing they were almost erased by time. Case 1. The Lake Bodom Murders. Espoo, Finland, 1960. Lake Bodom looks peaceful even today. Calm water, dense trees, a place people still camp, still swim, still laugh. But on one night in June 1960, it became the site of Finland's most infamous unsolved mass murder. 4 teenagers, Mila Bjorklund, Anja Mäki, Seppo Boisman, and Nils Gustafsson, pitched a tent near the lake. They were not reckless. They told their parents where they were going. They planned to return the next day. Sometime between early morning hours, an attacker approached the tent, not from inside, from outside. The canvas was slashed. The attack was frenzied and brutal. Mila and Anja were stabbed dozens of times. Seppo was beaten so severely his skull was crushed. Nils Gustafsson survived, but barely. He was found unconscious with broken jawbones and stab wounds. He claimed total memory loss. The crime scene was immediately compromised. Locals arrived before police. Children stepped in blood. Evidence was destroyed. Witnesses later claimed they saw a man in light-colored clothing walking away, but descriptions contradicted each other. For decades, Finland searched for a monster. A violent local named Carl Valdemar Gillström drowned years later, widely believed by the public to be the killer. A German man was suspected but deported. A nearby kiosk owner with a violent temper was interrogated repeatedly. Nothing held up. Then, in 2004, 44 years later, police made a decision that shocked the nation. They charged Nils Gustafsson. They claimed his injuries were inconsistent, that blood evidence suggested he moved after the murders, but the court dismantled the prosecution's case. Evidence had been lost, forensics were outdated, reasonable doubt was overwhelming. Gustafsson was acquitted, and Lake Bodom returned to silence. 3 teenagers murdered, 1 survivor haunted for life, and a killer who was never named. Case 2. The Nanjing University Dismemberment. Nanjing, China, 1996. This is one of the most disturbing crimes ever recorded in modern history. Diao Ai-king was a university student. She lived in a dormitory. She had no known enemies. She disappeared in January 1996. 9 days later, garbage collectors discovered something unthinkable. Human remains, cooked, cut, wrapped, scattered across the city. Over 2,000 body fragments were eventually recovered. The killer had boiled parts of her body, a deliberate act likely to remove forensic evidence. The cuts were precise, clean, suggesting medical or anatomical training. Investigators interviewed medical students, surgeons, slaughterhouse workers, butchers. No arrests. No witnesses. No confession. Even identifying the victim required advanced forensic reconstruction. To this day, no suspect has ever been publicly named. The most chilling aspect is not the brutality. It's the patience. This was not a crime of panic. It was controlled, organized, calculated. And whoever did it vanished into one of China's largest cities without leaving a trace. Case 3. The Lover's Lane Murders. Houston, Texas, 1990. Cheryl Henry and Andy Atkinson were young, in love, living normal lives. They went for a drive. They parked in a secluded area known to locals. They never left. Andy was tied to a tree. He was tortured, nearly decapitated. Cheryl was sexually assaulted and stabbed repeatedly. The killer staged the scene. Andy's money was not stolen. A single bill was left behind deliberately. DNA later linked the murders to an earlier sexual assault in the same area. The FBI profiled the killer. Organized, familiar with the area, likely local. But he never struck again. Despite DNA technology advancing over decades, no match has ever been found. Houston still has a killer who vanished after committing unimaginable violence. Case 4. The Murder of Alistair Wilson. Nairn, Scotland, 2004. This crime shattered the illusion of safety. Alistair Wilson was shot at his own front door. The killer knocked, spoke briefly, and fired. Silenced weapon, professional execution. No robbery, no clear motive. Scotland launched its largest murder inquiry. Thousands of tips, international cooperation, multiple theories. Nothing. To this day, no one knows why Alistair Wilson died, and no one knows who pulled the trigger. Case 5. The Murder of Lynn Bryant. Cornwall, England, 1998. Lynn Bryant took her dog for a walk. She never returned. She was stabbed repeatedly in broad daylight. No theft, no sexual motive, no explanation. Years later, DNA evidence was recovered. Still no arrest. Someone committed a brutal murder in a quiet village and disappeared completely. The Isdal Woman. Bergen, Norway, 1970. Some crimes don't just hide the killer, they erase the victim. On a cold November day in 1970, hikers in a remote Norwegian valley, known ominously as Isdalen, Death Valley, discovered the burned body of a woman lying among the rocks. Her body was badly charred, positioned as if she had tried to shield herself from the flames. But what disturbed investigators wasn't just how she died, it was how carefully she had been erased. Nearby were personal items, a watch, earrings, bottles, shoes. Every single label had been removed. Her clothes contained no tags. Her belongings had no names. Even the serial numbers had been scraped away. The autopsy revealed sleeping pills in her stomach and carbon monoxide in her lungs, meaning she was alive while the fire burned. No identification was ever found. No missing person report matched her description. Investigators later discovered she had stayed at multiple hotels under false names, using different wigs, different accents, and different stories. Witnesses recalled her watching people nervously, changing seats, avoiding conversation. Was she a spy? A smuggler? A woman running from someone or something? To this day, no one knows her real name. She is remembered only as the Isdal woman, a person who existed and then vanished completely. The Setagaya Family Murders, Tokyo, Japan, 2000. This crime defies logic. On December 30th, 2000, in the quiet Setagaya district of Tokyo, the Miyazawa family was brutally murdered inside their own home. Father, mother, 2 young children. The killer entered through a bathroom window. The youngest child was killed first, silently in his sleep. The father rushed upstairs and was stabbed to death with such force that the knife broke inside his skull. The mother and daughter were killed next. And then something unimaginable happened. The killer didn't leave. They stayed inside the house for hours. They ate food from the refrigerator, used the family computer, slept, used the bathroom. They left behind blood, fingerprints, DNA, clothing, shoe prints, an overwhelming amount of evidence. Police analyzed everything. They even identified the killer's blood type, ancestry markers, and physical traits. Yet no suspect was ever found. Despite one of the most evidence-rich crime scenes in history, the killer disappeared, never identified, never arrested. A family annihilated, and a mystery that remains open more than 2 decades later. The Goethe Forest Murders, Lower Saxony, Germany, 1989. In the summer of 1989, couples visiting the Goethe Forest began disappearing. The forest was massive, quiet, perfect for someone who wanted privacy. The first couple was found murdered deep among the trees. Weeks later, another couple vanished and was later found killed in a strikingly similar way. Same region, same pattern, same silence. Police knew they were hunting a serial killer. Hundreds of officers searched the forest. Roadblocks were set up. Witnesses reported seeing a strange man lurking among the trees. Years later, a convicted criminal emerged as a possible suspect, a violent man who lived nearby and had access to weapons. But he died before charges could ever be filed. With no confession and no conclusive forensic link, the case stalled. 4 people murdered, 1 killer, no justice. This Somerton Man. Adelaide, Australia, 1948. Early one morning, a man was found dead on Somerton Beach. He was well dressed, clean, no signs of struggle. There was no identification in his pockets, but inside his trousers was a tiny scrap of paper with 2 words printed on it. Tamam Shud. It meant ended. Investigators discovered that every label in his clothing had been removed. No one knew who he was. No one reported him missing. Later, police found a hidden code inside a book connected to the phrase, a cipher that has never been definitively solved. Was he poisoned? Was he a spy? Did he choose to disappear, or was he silenced? Decades later, the Somerton Man remains one of the most haunting unidentified deaths in history. The Boys on the Tracks, Arkansas, USA, 1987. 2 teenage boys went hunting near railroad tracks. They never came home. Their bodies were found lying on the tracks, run over by a train. Authorities ruled the deaths an accident, but the families never accepted it. The injuries didn't match the explanation. Witnesses reported suspicious vehicles. Evidence was overlooked or ignored. The boys had reportedly stumbled upon something they weren't meant to see. Despite years of pressure, the case was never officially reopened. 2 lives lost, and a truth that many believe was buried. The Yahtzee case. Hagen, Germany, 1984. This case begins with 6 letters: Y-O-T-G-Z-E. In 1984, a German food engineer named Günther Stoll began acting strangely. He told his wife that unknown people were following him, that they were plotting something against him. One evening, Stoll suddenly froze, grabbed a pen, and wrote a word down on paper: Yahtzee. Then he crossed it out. Hours later, Günther Stoll was found naked, critically injured, in a crashed car on the side of a highway. He was still alive. Before dying, he told police that 4 men had been with him, but he didn't know who they were. There was no blood at the crash site, meaning his injuries happened before the accident. His clothes were never found. The meaning of Yahtzee has never been explained. Was it a code? A license plate? A word written in panic? No suspects were ever charged. The Yahtzee case remains one of Europe's most unsettling unsolved deaths, a mystery built around paranoia, fear, and 6 unexplained letters. The Dupont de Ligonnès disappearance. Nantes, France, 2011. In April 2011, an entire family disappeared. Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès, his wife, and their 4 children vanished from their home in Nantes. Days later, investigators made a horrifying discovery. The bodies of Xavier's wife and children were buried beneath the patio, wrapped carefully, execution style. Xavier himself was gone. CCTV footage showed him traveling south through France, withdrawing cash, staying in hotels. Then, nothing. His last confirmed sighting was near a remote mountain area. No body was ever found. Did he kill his family and escape? Did he die by suicide in the wilderness? Or did he vanish intentionally? In 2019, a man was arrested in Scotland, briefly believed to be Xavier. It wasn't him. As of today, Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès is still missing, one of the most disturbing unresolved disappearances in modern Europe. The Villisca Axe Murders. Iowa, USA, 1912. On a quiet summer night, an entire household was wiped out. 8 people, 6 of them children. They were murdered with an axe while they slept. What makes this case chilling isn't just the brutality, it's the method. The killer used the blunt side of the axe, covered mirrors, covered victims' faces, and then vanished. Multiple suspects were arrested over the years. All were released. No one was ever convicted. The house still stands today, and many claim it remains one of the most haunted places in America. But what truly haunts Villisca isn't ghosts. It's the fact that someone slaughtered 8 people and was never held accountable. The Jamison family disappearance. Oklahoma, USA, 2009. The Jamison family,
Parents Bobby and Sherilyn and their 6-year-old daughter Madison packed up their truck and drove into the Oklahoma wilderness. They never came back. Their vehicle was found abandoned. Inside were their wallets, their IDs, their money, their dog alive. 4 years later, their skeletal remains were found in a remote area. No clear cause of death could be determined. Security footage later surfaced showing the couple behaving erratically, standing motionless in their home for hours. Was it paranoia, mental illness, a murder-suicide, or something else entirely? To this day, no official explanation has ever been accepted. The Black Dahlia, Los Angeles, USA, 1947. Elizabeth Short was found mutilated in a vacant lot. Her body was severed in half, drained of blood, posed deliberately. The killer had surgical precision. The case became a media frenzy. Hundreds confessed, falsely. Dozens of suspects emerged. None were proven. Despite letters sent to police and newspapers, the killer was never identified. The Black Dahlia case remains America's most infamous unsolved murder, a crime so calculated it still defies explanation. The Beaumont Children, Adelaide, Australia, 1966. 3 siblings went to the beach. They never returned. Witnesses saw them playing with a man. Multiple searches followed. Psychics were consulted. Suspects were questioned. Nothing. No bodies were ever found. The disappearance changed how Australia viewed child safety forever. And somewhere, someone knows what happened to the Beaumont children. They just never spoke.
The Keddie Cabin Murders. Keddie, California, USA, 1981. Keddie was the kind of place people went to escape the world. A quiet mountain resort town. Cabins tucked into pine trees. No reason to lock doors. On one April night in 1981, Cabin 28 became the site of one of the most brutal and mishandled murder investigations in American history. Inside the cabin lived Sue Sharp and her children. That night, Sue, her son John, his friend Dana, and Sue's daughter Tina were attacked. Sue, John, and Dana were found bound, beaten, and stabbed inside the living room. But Tina, 12 years old, was missing. Police initially assumed she had run away. They were wrong. 3 years later, Tina's skull was discovered over 30 miles away in the woods. The crime scene had been catastrophically compromised. Evidence was lost. Suspects were mishandled. 2 local men were strongly suspected, both with violent histories, but never charged. Cabin 28 was demolished years later, but the case remains open. 4 victims, a mountain town that still whispers, and a crime that may never see justice. The Darden Family Murders. Ena, Illinois, USA, 1987. The Darden family was attacked in their own home. Father, mother, 3 young children. All were beaten and stabbed to death. Nothing was stolen. There were no signs of forced entry. Investigators believe the killer may have known the family, or at least felt comfortable inside the house. 1 suspect was convicted, then later released when evidence fell apart. To this day, the murders officially remain unsolved. 5 lives ended in a rural farmhouse, and no one held responsible. The Servant Girl Annihilator. Austin, Texas, USA, 1884 to 1885. Long before modern forensics, a killer terrorized Austin. Young servant women were attacked in their homes at night. They were struck with axes while they slept. Sometimes their employers were killed too if they tried to intervene. Panic spread across the city. People armed themselves, doors were barricaded, citizens formed patrols. The killer was never caught. Some historians believe this unidentified murderer may have influenced or even preceded later serial killers using similar methods. Austin eventually fell silent again, but the identity of the Servant Girl Annihilator was lost to history. The Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. Mays County, Oklahoma, 1977. Camp Scott was meant to be safe, a summer camp for young girls. On the first night of camp, 3 girls were murdered in their tent. The crime devastated the nation. A suspect was arrested and put on trial, but acquitted due to lack of evidence. Years later, letters surfaced suggesting guilt. Still, nothing definitive. The case remains officially unsolved. The camp was permanently closed, and a place meant for childhood memories became synonymous with fear. The Krebs Cipher Murder. Sweden, 1999. A young woman was found murdered in her apartment. At the scene, police discovered a strange handwritten cipher, symbols, letters, numbers. No one could decode it. Friends said the victim had recently been fearful. Investigators believed the cipher might be a message from the killer or a clue the victim left behind. It was never deciphered. No suspect was ever charged. A murder and a message that still hasn't been understood. The Dublin Disappearance. Dublin, Sweden, 2013. A teenage girl vanished after a normal day. No ransom, no struggle, no confirmed sightings. Her phone went silent. Despite modern technology, surveillance, phone records, social media, investigators found nothing. Searches turned up no remains, no suspects. In an age where disappearance should be almost impossible, she vanished completely. The Andes plane crash murder theory. Argentina, Chile, 1972. Most people know the Andes crash story as survival, but investigators later questioned whether not all deaths were natural. Some injuries didn't align with the crash. Some deaths occurred later under unclear circumstances. No charges were ever filed, but the possibility lingers that in extreme survival, lines were crossed that were never fully examined. The truth remains buried under snow and silence. The Jackson County Doe. Florida, USA, 1984. A woman's body was found along a rural road. No ID, no missing person match. She had been dead for weeks. Despite composite sketches, dental records, and public appeals, no one ever claimed her. She remains only known as a county name and a year, a person reduced to a case file, and a life erased without explanation. The Noida Double Murder. Noida, India, 2008. This case destroyed public trust in investigation itself. In a quiet residential apartment complex in Noida, 14-year-old Arushi Talwar was found murdered in her bedroom. Her throat had been slit. There were no signs of forced entry, no screams reported, no clear motive. The family's domestic worker was initially blamed and within hours lynched by public opinion. The next day, something even worse was discovered. Arushi's father went to the rooftop terrace and found the body of Hemraj, the same domestic worker, hidden behind a panel. The investigation collapsed into chaos. Evidence was contaminated, crime scenes were mishandled, multiple theories contradicted each other. Parents were accused, then acquitted, then accused again. Years passed. No one was ever conclusively proven guilty. 2 lives ended, multiple reputations destroyed, and a case that became a symbol of investigative failure in modern India. The ritual murders of Kenya. Kenya, 1990s to 2000s. Across rural Kenya, bodies began appearing. Children, adults, sometimes missing organs. These were not crimes of opportunity. They were ritual killings believed by the perpetrators to bring wealth, power, or protection. Victims were abducted quietly, their bodies later discarded in fields or forests. Communities were terrified. Witnesses were afraid to speak. Suspects were protected by influence or fear. In many cases, arrests were made, but convictions were rare. To this day, dozens of ritual murder cases remain unsolved. Families still search for answers, and the belief that fueled these crimes has never fully disappeared. The Al-Hila mass grave mystery, Iraq, post-2003. After the fall of Saddam Hussein's regime, mass graves were uncovered across Iraq. One of the most haunting discoveries occurred near Al-Hila. Hundreds of bodies, men, women, children, some bound, some blindfolded. No names, no records, no official accountability. Many were believed to be victims of political purges, but exact dates, perpetrators, and circumstances remain unclear. Families dug through bones hoping to find loved ones. Some never did. The crimes happened in silence and remain unsolved, not because of lack of victims, but because of too many. The Cedar Rapids of Japan, the Fukuoka dismemberment. Fukuoka, Japan, 2004. A man was found murdered and dismembered in Fukuoka. Body parts were scattered across the city. What made the case disturbing was not just the violence, but the precision. The cuts suggested experience, knowledge, calm. Despite extensive CCTV coverage and forensic work, the trail ended abruptly. No arrest, no confession. In a country known for high clearance rates, this case stands out as one of the rare murders that vanished into nothing. The disappearance of the Sodder children. West Virginia, USA, Middle East tie theories, 1945. Though often considered American, this case gained international mystery over time. After a house fire on Christmas Eve, 5 Sodder children vanished. No remains were found. The parents believed the children were kidnapped, possibly trafficked overseas. Sightings were reported for years, even abroad. One photograph sent decades later appeared to show one of the missing children as an adult. No proof ever followed. Whether they died in the fire or were taken, the truth remains unknown. The Honjo killings. Honjo, Japan, 1976. Multiple victims were found murdered in similar ways. Remote locations, blunt force trauma, little evidence. Police suspected a serial offender, but couldn't link cases definitively.
Records from the era are incomplete, witnesses aged, leads vanished. The killer, if there was one, was never identified, and the cases quietly faded from public memory. The disappearance of Sharon Galilee, Galilee region, Israel, 1984. A young woman disappeared after leaving her home. Her car was later found abandoned. No signs of violence, no ransom, no confirmed sightings. The terrain was searched extensively. Forests, hills, caves, nothing. The case remains open. In a region marked by conflict, her disappearance was swallowed by larger events, but for her family, time stopped in 1984. The Port Said child murders. Port Said, Egypt, 1990s. Several children were found murdered near the port area. Some showed signs of abuse, others had been strangled. Authorities suspected trafficking or exploitation networks. Investigations were quiet, details scarce, cases unsolved. Parents stopped letting children walk alone. Rumors spread, but justice never came. The Taiwan sister disappearance. Taipei, Taiwan, 2006. A young woman vanished on her way home. CCTV showed her entering a subway station and never exiting. No evidence of abduction, no signs of escape. Despite modern surveillance, phone tracking, and public appeals, she vanished completely. In one of Asia's most monitored cities, someone disappeared as if they never existed.
The Ayotzinapa 43. Iguala, Guerrero, Mexico, 2014. On one night in September, 43 student teachers vanished. They were traveling to attend a protest. They never came home. Local police stopped their buses. Gunfire erupted. Students were taken away in patrol vehicles. The government claimed the students were handed to a criminal group, murdered and burned. But the evidence did not match the story. Independent investigators found signs of evidence fabrication, destroyed records, and coerced confessions. Military involvement was alleged, and then denied. Mass graves were discovered nearby, but none contained the 43. To this day, their bodies have never been recovered. Their families still march, still protest, still demand answers. This was not just a disappearance. It was a message. The Lost Boys of El Salvador. El Salvador, Civil War era, 1980s. During El Salvador's Civil War, children began disappearing from villages. Soldiers would raid homes. Parents were killed or arrested. Children vanished. Years later, it was discovered many were illegally trafficked and adopted overseas. Some grew up not knowing their real names, not knowing their families had searched for decades. Thousands are still unaccounted for. The war ended. The disappearances did not. The missing women of Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua, Mexico, 1990s to present. Young women began vanishing in Ciudad Juarez. Factory workers, students, teenagers. Some bodies were found in the desert. Many were never found at all. Authorities dismissed the cases, blamed the victims, lost evidence. Patterns were ignored. Activists who spoke out were threatened. Hundreds of disappearances remain unresolved. The city became known worldwide, not for justice, but for silence. The Indonesian 1965 disappearances. Indonesia, 1965 to 1966.
After a failed coup, Indonesia descended into mass killings. Anyone suspected of political opposition disappeared. Villages were emptied, rivers filled with bodies. Estimates range from 500,000 to over 1 million dead. No official death lists, no trials, no accountability. Families were told to forget. To this day, many mass graves remain unmarked. The truth is known, but never officially acknowledged. The Irish Mother and Baby Homes. Ireland, 1920s to 1990s. Unmarried women were sent to institutions. Their babies were taken. Many children died. Records were falsified, graves unmarked. In Tomb, hundreds of children were found buried in a former septic tank. For decades, the state denied wrongdoing. Investigations came too late. Many families will never know where their children went or why no one stopped it. The missing of Flight MH1730. Malaysia, Indian Ocean, 2014. A modern aircraft vanished, 239 people. No distress call, no clear wreckage site. Radar data suggested deliberate course changes. Governments released conflicting information. Debris was found years later, but not enough to explain what happened. Families were left with fragments instead of answers. In the age of satellites and tracking, a plane disappeared completely. The Srebrenica missing. Bosnia, 1995. Over 8,000 men and boys disappeared in days. They were separated from their families, taken away, executed. Mass graves were later uncovered. Some bodies moved multiple times to hide evidence. Even now, remains are still being identified. Some families have buried only partial skeletons. The truth was known, but the damage was permanent. The North Korean abductions. Japan, South Korea, Europe, 1970s to 1980s. People vanished from beaches, from streets, from foreign countries. Later, North Korea admitted abducting civilians to train spies, but not all cases were acknowledged. Not all victims returned. Some families were told their loved ones never existed. Others were given ashes with no proof. The full list of abductees is still unknown. The Argentina disappeared. Argentina, 1976 to 1983. They were called Los Desaparecidos, students, workers, pregnant women, taken at night, never seen again. Babies born in captivity were given to military families. Bodies were dumped into the ocean. When the dictatorship fell, the records were gone. Thousands remain missing. Mothers still gather in silence, holding photographs that have aged more than their children ever could.
These were not accidents. They were systems. Disappearance used as a weapon. Silence enforced by power. Truth buried beneath paperwork, threats, and time. Some of these cases are called unsolved. Others are called history. But for the families, they are still happening, every single day. This is NOXHOUR. And when people vanish in numbers this large, the question is no longer who did it, it's who allowed it.